Imagine an island that doesn't exist on any map, an island where history has been erased and the sea itself guards a secret older than time. Two men set out to film a simple documentary, but what they uncovered was never meant for the living. A vanished settlement, whispers of the drowned dead, and a monster from the deep, chained by human sacrifice. This is not just a story, it's a warning. Because the sea remembers, and once it wakes, nothing can stop it. The arrival. The salty breeze of the coral sea brushed against the deck of the ferry as Liam McCarthy leaned against the railing. The 32-year-old documentary filmmaker from Sydney had always been drawn to stories that carried mystery, history, and a touch of danger. This time, however, his instincts had taken him much further than his usual city-based adventures. He had recently stumbled upon an old letter in the archives of a Brisbane library. The letter, yellowed by age, spoke of a place known only as Warrinora Island, a speck on the map of Queensland's northern waters. What captured Liam's curiosity was the claim that the island had once been a thriving settlement in the 1800s, but suddenly vanished from all official records after 1897. The letter described it as an island swallowed by time, yet still whispering its secrets to the waves. "Mate, you sure about this?" asked Callum, his best friend and fellow adventurer, who had agreed to join him on this strange expedition. Callum was the opposite of Liam, less about history and more about thrills. He had packed fishing rods, a drone, and even a surfboard, convinced that this trip would end up as just another beach holiday. Liam chuckled. "You said you wanted an adventure. Well, this is it. An entire community disappeared, and no one knows why. Doesn't that tickle your curiosity?" Callum rolled his eyes, but smiled. "It tickles my common sense to stay back on the mainland. But all right, I'm in. Just don't blame me when we're camping with mosquitoes the size of helicopters." The ferry engine hummed as the vessel cut through the turquoise waters. Around them, the horizon stretched endlessly, dotted only by distant silhouettes of islands. The captain, an elderly man named Russell, noticed their excitement. "You fellas headed to Warrinora, are ya?" His voice was raspy from years of shouting over the sea. "Not many go there anymore. Locals say it's cursed." Liam's eyes lit up. "Cursed? Why?" Russell shrugged, adjusting his cap. "Depends on who you ask. Some reckon a cyclone wiped the settlement off. Others say the place is haunted by the souls of pearl divers who never returned. Either way, folk avoid it. Too many strange stories." Callum muttered under his breath, "Fantastic. Ghosts and cyclones. What could possibly go wrong?" 2 hours later, the island finally came into view. Dense rainforest hugged the coastline, broken only by white sandy beaches that shimmered under the Queensland sun. The island looked untouched, almost pristine, yet there was something eerie about its stillness. No boats, no smoke, no sound of human life. The ferry dropped them off at a small wooden jetty, half collapsed and covered in barnacles. Russell gave a final warning. "I'll be back in 4 days. Don't be late, or you'll be stuck here longer than you like." Then, with a salute, he steered the ferry away, leaving the two men alone with their gear. As soon as the engine's growl faded, silence took over, heavy, almost oppressive. The rainforest rustled with unseen creatures, and the waves lapped against the shore like an endless heartbeat. Liam hoisted his camera bag and grinned. "This is it, Callum. The adventure begins." They set up camp on the beach, pitching their tents under the shade of pandanus palms. While Callum prepared a fire pit, Liam wandered inland, guided by the remains of an old path overgrown with vines. Within minutes, he stumbled upon the ruins of a stone wall, its surface cracked and covered in moss. He ran his fingers across the weathered stone, imagining the lives that once unfolded here. Suddenly, a strange sound echoed, a faint whisper, almost like a voice carried by the wind. He froze, listening carefully. It repeated, soft and haunting, though he couldn't make out the words. "Callum!" he called, but when his friend jogged over, the sound had vanished. "What is it?" Callum asked, panting. "Did you hear that? A voice? Like someone speaking." Callum looked around. "Mate, we're the only people here. You probably heard the trees." But Liam wasn't convinced. The letter he found in Brisbane had hinted at voices of the forgotten. Could it be more than just folklore? That night, after a dinner of grilled fish and tinned beans, the two sat by the fire. The stars above blazed brighter than they ever saw in Sydney, the Milky Way stretching like a silver river. Liam reviewed the footage he had taken, while Callum amused himself flying his drone over the coastline. "Check this out," Callum said, showing Liam the drone's live feed. The screen revealed the thick rainforest canopy, the shoreline, and then, in the middle of the island, what looked like the roof of an old building, half collapsed but unmistakably man-made. Liam's heart raced. That's it. Proof that people lived here. Tomorrow we explore. As the fire crackled, a cool breeze swept through the camp. The whisper returned, louder this time, and unmistakably human. Liam's blood ran cold. It was a woman's voice, distant yet clear. "Leave before it's too late." Both men froze, staring into the darkness beyond the firelight. Callum forced a laugh, probably just the wind. But his voice lacked conviction. Liam leaned forward, his eyes fixed on the shadows. No, that was real. The island, beautiful yet unsettling, seemed to breathe around them. Whatever secrets Warrenora held, they were about to uncover, but at what cost? First discovery. The next morning, the island greeted them with golden sunlight spilling across the sand. The crash of the waves blended with the distant calls of seabirds, creating a soundtrack that was equal parts serene and unsettling. Liam barely touched his coffee. His mind was racing with the memory of the voice they had heard the night before. Every fiber of his being told him it was more than wind or imagination. Yet, he also knew that chasing shadows wouldn't help their documentary. They needed tangible proof, ruins, artifacts, anything. "Ready to trek?" he asked Callum, tightening the straps on his backpack. Callum, still groggy, grumbled, "Mate, I'm only doing this because you promised me we'd fish after. If I get bitten by some giant snake in this jungle, you're telling my mum it was all your idea." They followed the overgrown trail deeper into the rainforest. The air grew heavy, thick with the scent of damp earth and salt. Vines draped across branches like nature's curtains, and the ground squelched with every step. Liam's camera whirred softly as he documented their path, while Callum hacked at the undergrowth with a machete he had insisted on bringing. An hour later, they found it. The structure spotted by Callum's drone. It was more than just a roof. Before them stood the crumbling remains of what looked like a church, its stone walls cracked but still standing proud against the encroaching jungle. Ivy and moss clung to its surface, but the arched doorway remained clear, inviting, almost daring them to step inside. "Blimey," Callum muttered. "A bloody church, out here in the middle of nowhere." Liam's pulse quickened. This proves there was a community. Churches were always the center of settlements. Imagine the stories this place holds. They stepped through the arch, their footsteps echoing across the hollow interior. The roof had partially caved in, allowing shafts of sunlight to pierce through and illuminate the debris. Broken pews lay scattered, and fragments of stained glass crunched under their boots. At the far end stood a stone altar, surprisingly intact. On it rested a carved wooden cross, its surface worn smooth by time. Liam lifted his camera, capturing every angle while Callum inspected the walls. "Mate, come look at this," Callum called. He had discovered faded inscriptions etched into the stone near the altar. The letters were barely legible, but one phrase stood out: "Beware the sea's silence." The words sent a chill through Liam. The sea's silence? What does that even mean? Before Callum could answer, a sudden gust of wind swept through the church, slamming the broken door against the wall with a bang. Both men jumped. Then faintly, they heard it again, the whisper. This time, it was clearer. The same woman's voice, soft but commanding. "Do not awaken what sleeps." Liam spun around, recording with his camera, but the church was empty. The sound had no source. Callum swore under his breath. "I'm telling you, mate, this place is giving me the creeps. Churches are meant to feel safe, not like bloody horror films." Liam, though shaken, couldn't suppress his excitement. "If we capture this on film, it'll make the documentary legendary." They spent the rest of the day exploring the area around the church. Scattered foundations hinted at houses long gone. Rusted tools lay buried in the soil. Near a clearing, they found the remains of a well, its stones slick with moss. But the strangest discovery came just before dusk. At the edge of the village ruins, half buried under roots, Liam uncovered a leather-bound diary. Its pages were fragile, but many were still readable. The handwriting was elegant, belonging to someone educated. The first page bore a name: Eliza Harrow, 1896. Liam's hands trembled as he opened the diary. Entries spoke of daily life, fishing, prayer gatherings, children playing by the shore. But as the pages went on, the tone darkened. The sea grows too quiet. The men fear diving now. They speak of shadows moving beneath the water. At night, voices call from the waves. Some say it is the drowned returning. The Reverend tells us to pray harder, but faith alone does not silence the whispers. The final entry stopped Liam cold. Tomorrow we leave. The silence is too deep. If anyone finds this, beware. The sea remembers. Liam closed the diary slowly. His eyes met Callum's, whose expression was pale, uneasy. So, an entire community fled? Just left everything behind? Callum asked. Looks like it. But why no records? Why erase them from history? Liam replied. As they hiked back to camp, the weight of the discovery pressed heavily on them. The whispers, the warnings, the strange phrase about the sea's silence, it all hinted at something darker than natural disaster. That night, after another meager dinner, Liam spread the diary on his lap, reading by the glow of the fire. Callum tried to distract himself by checking the drone footage, but his nerves were frayed. Every rustle in the forest made him glance over his shoulder. Suddenly, the drone screen flickered. Static blurred the image, then cleared, showing the shoreline they had filmed earlier. But now, standing on the beach in the frame, was a figure, a woman. Her dress was tattered, her hair long and dripping as though she had just walked out of the sea. She stared directly into the camera, her expression unreadable. Callum dropped the controller with a curse. "Tell me you saw that!" Liam's heart thudded in his chest. He replayed the footage, but the frame was empty. Only waves, only sand. "She was there," Callum insisted, his voice cracking. "I swear she was bloody there." Liam didn't answer. He simply stared into the darkness beyond the fire, where the whisper rose again, surrounding them like the tide. "Leave while you still can." This time, it wasn't just a whisper. It was a chorus, many voices overlapping, carrying the sorrow of the sea. The fire sputtered, the flames bending as though pushed by invisible hands. Callum scrambled to his feet, panic etched across his face. "Mate, I'm done. Tomorrow we tell Russell to come back. Stuff the documentary, stuff the island. We're leaving." But Liam couldn't tear his eyes away from the diary. The final words echoed in his mind, "The sea remembers." And deep down, he knew leaving might no longer be an option. The island's warning. The sun rose heavy and red the next morning, as though the island itself bled into the sky. For Callum, it was a reminder that they had stayed one night too long. He packed his gear with a grim determination, muttering, 4 days, he said. 4 days, and we'll be stuck here forever." But Liam wasn't ready to give up. The diary still burned in his thoughts. Eliza Harrow's words, the whispers, the strange figure in the drone footage. It was no longer about just making a documentary. It was about finding the truth. "Callum, think about it," Liam argued as they walked along the shoreline, waves brushing their boots. An entire community vanished. That diary proved something unnatural happened. If we leave now, the world may never know. Callum scoffed. "The world doesn't care, mate. People want fishing vlogs and drone shots of beaches, not ghost stories about drowned colonists." Before Liam could reply, a sudden silence fell over the beach. The gulls stopped calling. The waves themselves seemed to soften, retreating into a hush. The only sound left was the pounding of their hearts. "Bloody hell," Callum whispered. "The sea's silence." It was exactly what the inscription in the church had warned them about. The silence was unnatural, suffocating. Even the wind refused to stir. Then, faint ripples appeared on the water. Not from wind, not from fish. They spread outward in circles, as though something massive stirred beneath the surface. "Back!" Liam hissed, pulling Callum away. The ripples subsided, but the silence remained, a warning. They hurried inland, seeking the uneasy comfort of the ruins. The jungle, however, seemed different now, darker, heavier. Every step was accompanied by whispers that darted in and out of hearing. Sometimes it was laughter, sometimes sobbing, sometimes words they couldn't quite catch. By midday, they reached a clearing they hadn't noticed before. At its center lay a graveyard. Crumbling headstones leaned at odd angles, some split in half, others swallowed by roots. The names were nearly erased by time, but one stone caught Liam's attention. It read simply, Eliza Harrow, 1871 to 1896. Liam froze. This can't be right, Callum frowned. The diary was dated 1896. How could she be dead before she even wrote it? A chill crept up Liam's spine. unless the diary wasn't just a record but something else. As he crouched to study the grave, a sudden rush of cold air swept the clearing. The whispers grew louder, forming into a distinct phrase. "The sea remembers." Callum grabbed Liam's arm. "Mate, I'm not joking anymore. This isn't history. This isn't archaeology. This is bloody wrong." Before Liam could answer, a figure appeared at the far end of the graveyard, the same woman from the drone footage. Her dress clung wet to her form, her hair dripping onto the earth though no rain had fallen. She stared at them, her face pale, eyes dark hollows. "Eliza?" Liam breathed without realizing. The woman raised a hand, pointing toward the ocean. Her lips moved, but no sound came. Then, in a rush, the silence broke, a deafening roar of waves crashing against rocks, though the beach was far away. The ground trembled beneath their feet, and just as suddenly she was gone. Both men stood frozen, unable to speak. Finally, Callum snapped. "That's it. We're done. I don't care what that diary says. I don't care what your bloody documentary needs. We're leaving today." But Liam wasn't so sure. Something in Eliza's gesture had felt deliberate, like she was guiding them. Toward the ocean. Toward the truth. That night, they hardly slept. The wind carried voices, circling the camp like a restless crowd. Shapes moved in the tree line, always just out of sight. At one point, Callum swore he saw hands pressing against the walls of his tent, though when he burst outside, nothing was there. By dawn, Liam made his decision. "We need to check the shoreline," she pointed to. Callum stared at him, disbelief etched on his face. "You're mad. Absolutely mad. You saw what I saw, and your plan is to go closer?" "Yes," Liam said firmly. "Because if we don't, we'll never understand. And if we don't understand, we'll never leave." Reluctantly, Callum followed. The two men trekked across the island until they reached the northern coast. There, hidden among jagged rocks, they found something astonishing: the remains of an old harbor. Rotted wooden posts jutted from the water, and pieces of broken boats lay scattered along the sand. "This must have been their dock," Liam whispered, filming every detail, "where they tried to escape." But something was wrong. The boats weren't destroyed by storm or time. They were splintered, as though torn apart from below. In the shallows, they found rusted chains, heavy as anchors. Callum tugged one up, only to realize it was wrapped around bones, human bones. He dropped it instantly, swearing his face white. "That's it. That's bloody it, Liam. They didn't leave. They never left." Liam's camera shook in his hands. "No, they tried, but something stopped them." The sea lapped at their boots. For a moment, Liam thought he saw shapes beneath the waves, faces pale and staring upward before dissolving back into water. The whispers rose again, more urgent now, overlapping in dozens of voices. "Do not awaken what sleeps. The sea remembers. Go before it's too late." The water rippled violently, though the air was still. Callum grabbed Liam, pulling him back. "We're leaving, now." But even as they stumbled away from the shore, Liam knew the island wasn't finished with them. The warning wasn't just for their safety. It was for something else, something hidden, waiting, just beneath the surface. Beneath the waves, the northern shoreline lingered in their minds long after they left it. The broken boats, the chains wrapped around bones, the whispers rising with the tide. It all pointed to something larger, darker, than either of them had imagined. That night, neither Liam nor Callum could sleep. The sea was louder than ever, crashing against the reef with unnatural force, though the sky was clear and windless. Each wave seemed to carry a voice, not whispers this time, but cries, desperate, pleading. By the dim firelight, Callum finally broke the silence. "We need to go to the jetty tomorrow, mate. I don't care if Russell isn't due back for another 2 days. We wait there until he shows, because if we stay another night in this jungle, I'll lose my bloody mind." But Liam shook his head, eyes locked on the diary spread across his lap. "No, Eliza was pointing us to the sea. Whatever happened here, the answer is beneath those waves." Callum laughed bitterly. "Of course it is. Why wouldn't it be in the one place I refuse to bloody go?" Liam leaned forward, his voice urgent. "Think about it. The silence, the warnings, the boats torn apart. Something lives out there. If we can capture it, if we can prove it, then we'll never leave this island alive," Callum snapped. "You're not listening, mate. They didn't vanish. They were taken." The fire hissed as if to punctuate his words, sparks scattering into the darkness. The following morning, against Callum's protests, Liam prepared for a dive. He had brought basic snorkeling gear for filming coral reefs. Nothing professional, but enough for shallow exploration. Callum paced the beach, chewing his lip, muttering every curse he knew. "Mate, this is suicide. You don't know what's down there. Sharks, rips, God knows what else. And after what we saw, you think going into the bloody water is a good idea?" But Liam was resolute. If the settlement ended in the sea, then that's where the story lies. Just keep the camera rolling from the shore. Callum reluctantly set up the tripod, positioning it to film the water. "When you get eaten, don't blame me for not jumping in after you." Liam slipped beneath the surface. The world below was otherworldly. Sunlight pierced the clear water in golden shafts, illuminating schools of fish darting between colorful coral. For a moment, it was beautiful, serene. He filmed steadily, his heart racing but controlled. Then, deeper among the rocks, he saw something unnatural. Wooden beams, rusted metal, the remains of a boat half buried in sand. Ropes still trailed from its frame, tangled and frayed. He swam closer, brushing sand aside, and froze. A skull stared back at him. Empty sockets, jaw agape, chains still coiled around the ribcage. His chest tightened, the diary's words echoed. "The sea remembers." He wanted to surface, to escape, but something drew his gaze further down. There on the seabed lay dozens more skeletons. Men, women, even children. All chained, all reaching upward, as though they had drowned together in a single horrifying moment. And then the water grew cold. A shadow passed above him, large, silent. He tilted his camera upward, but nothing was there. Only ripples. Then the whisper filled his ears, not muffled as before, but clear, as though spoken inside his head. "Do not awaken what sleeps." His lungs burned. Panic seized him. He kicked desperately, breaking the surface with a gasp. On shore, Callum rushed forward. "What happened? You're white as a ghost." Liam collapsed onto the sand, coughing, ripping off his mask. "They're down there, all of them. The whole bloody settlement. Chained, drowned." Callum recoiled. "Drowned? Together?" "They didn't leave the island. They were forced into the sea." The words hung heavy between them. Forced? By what? Or by whom? Later that evening, as the tide receded, they returned to the ruins of the church. Liam wanted answers, but the island gave only fragments. The diary's last pages seemed clearer now. Eliza hadn't been writing about leaving by choice. She and the others had been fleeing something that came from the sea. While Liam read aloud, Callum explored the altar again. He brushed away debris and discovered something hidden beneath, a carved symbol, etched deep into the stone. It resembled a spiral, circling inward, with jagged lines radiating like waves. "What the hell is this?" Callum muttered. Liam recognized it. The same spiral had been carved into the beams of the wrecked boat he'd seen underwater. "It's some kind of mark, maybe a warning, or maybe a seal." The ground vibrated, only faintly, but enough that both men felt it. The fire they had lit outside flickered violently. And then came the silence. This time it wasn't just the absence of birds or waves, it was absolute. Not a single sound remained. Even their breathing seemed muted, unnatural. The air thickened, the jungle pressed closer, and from the shadows of the ruined church a figure stepped forward. Eliza. Her eyes glowed faintly now, shimmering with the reflection of the sea. Water dripped endlessly from her hands, though she never moved. She raised her arm and pointed once more toward the ocean. Callum backed away. No, I'm not following her. Not again." But Liam stood firm, entranced. "She's not warning us anymore. She's guiding us." Eliza's lips parted, and this time the words were audible, echoing through the silent air. "It wakes." The fire outside went out. The silence broke, replaced by a thunderous roar as waves pounded the distant shore, louder than any storm. The ground shook violently, throwing both men to their knees. Callum shouted over the chaos, voice hoarse with terror. "What the bloody hell does that mean? What wakes?" But Liam already knew. The chains, the drowned settlement, the spiral, they weren't just victims of the sea. They were offerings, sacrifices. And something beneath Woronora Island had been fed. Now, after more than a century, it was stirring again. The awakening. The island did not sleep that night. Every few minutes the ground trembled, sending shivers through the sand beneath their tents. The sea, once calm, roared like a monster thrashing in its cage. Even the trees groaned as though their roots strained against some unseen pull. Callum sat rigid by the cold ashes of the fire, clutching the machete across his knees. His eyes were wide, unblinking, fixed on the black line of the horizon. "It's coming for us," he muttered. "Whatever it is, it's bloody coming." Liam, though equally terrified, couldn't stop replaying Eliza's last words in his head. "It wakes. What if it's not coming for us?" he said quietly. "What if it's waking because of us? Because we stirred things up?" "Don't," Callum snapped. "Don't you dare blame me for following your obsession. I told you from day one this was madness." Liam didn't argue. He knew his friend was right, and yet he couldn't turn away. If this was the island's secret, then he had to see it through. By dawn, the tremors grew worse. Birds finally returned to the trees, but instead of singing, they shrieked in panicked bursts, then fled inland as though escaping something unseen. Drawn by a force he couldn't explain, Liam led them back to the northern shore. Callum cursed under his breath the entire way, but followed nonetheless. The beach was unrecognizable. Waves slammed against the rocks with such ferocity that spray flew high into the canopy. The water churned black, as though ink had spilled into the sea. And then they saw it. At first, Liam thought the dark shapes breaking the surface were rocks, newly revealed by the tide. But as the water foamed around them, he realized with horror they were structures. Ruins. Whole buildings rising from the depths, stone walls and timber frames crusted with barnacles. The drowned village was surfacing. "Jesus Christ," Callum whispered. "It's coming back." Liam's camera whirred as he filmed, breathless. "Not back. Up. The sea is giving it up." But the sea wasn't giving anything. It was pushing. As more of the village emerged, so too did its inhabitants. Skeletons, still bound in chains, bobbed to the surface, swaying grotesquely with the waves. Some drifted close to shore, arms reaching as though desperate to claw onto land. Callum gagged. "We need to go, now." Yet Liam stepped closer, transfixed. "Don't you see? This is it. The evidence. The proof of what happened here." But then the water stilled. Completely. The sea, that furious roaring sea, froze as flat as glass. Even the skeletons hung motionless in the water. The silence returned, heavier than ever. From beneath that mirror surface, something moved. At first, it was only a shadow. Vast, shapeless, gliding slowly upward. Then came the sound. Not a roar, not a whisper, but a low, resonant hum that vibrated in their bones. The very air seemed to bend around it. Liam stumbled back, camera shaking in his grip. Callum screamed, "What the hell is that?" The shadow grew larger, spreading wide across the bay. Then, breaking the surface, rose something no human eyes were meant to see. A mass of flesh and stone, as though the sea itself had birthed a creature forged from coral, rock, and bone. Tentacles slick with seaweed writhed outward, each thick as a tree trunk. Eyes, too many to count, blinked open across its body, glowing faintly blue like drowned lanterns. And from its maw, a soundless scream stretched across the island. Callum dropped his machete, falling to his knees. "No, no, no, no." Liam could only stare. His rational mind tried to catalog, to describe, to film, but his soul screamed at him to run. The creature shifted, its movements slow but deliberate, as if waking from centuries of sleep. Chains clung to its body, the same spiral symbols etched into the rusted links. It was bound once, imprisoned beneath the waves, and now it was free. Suddenly, the skeletons floating in the water jerked upright. Their chains rattled as though pulled by unseen hands. One by one, they turned their hollow skulls toward Liam and Callum. And then they began to walk. Dragging themselves through the shallows, the drowned dead advanced onto the beach. Water poured endlessly from their bones, yet their steps were steady, purposeful. "Run!" Callum screamed. They sprinted back toward the tree line, the ground shaking beneath their feet. Liam glanced back once, just once, and saw the impossible sight of Eliza among the horde. Unlike the others, her eyes still glowed with faint humanity. She raised her hand, not in threat but in warning. "Do not awaken what sleeps," but it was too late. The creature bellowed, a soundless cry that shook the island to its core. Trees split, rocks tumbled, the very earth seemed to recoil. Liam and Callum collapsed in the jungle, gasping for breath. Behind them, the drowned dead dragged themselves across the sand, unrelenting. Callum clutched Liam's arm, his voice broken. "We're not getting out, are we?" Liam swallowed hard, staring back at the rising ruin, the writhing monstrosity, the endless tide of chained corpses. His camera still rolled in his hands, capturing every horrific second. "We will," he said, though his voice betrayed him. "We have to. If this thing wakes fully, it won't just be this island. The ground shook again, harder this time. Somewhere in the distance, trees toppled like matchsticks. The awakening had begun. No escape. The jungle swallowed them whole as they ran, branches whipping their faces, roots clawing at their ankles. Behind them, the ground thundered with every heave of the creature rising from the sea. The air itself seemed to quake, vibrating with the silent roar that refused to leave their skulls. Liam stumbled but kept moving, clutching the camera like a lifeline. Every instinct screamed at him to throw it away, to lighten his load, but he couldn't. If they survived, this footage would be the only proof. Callum, panting furiously, shouted over his shoulder, "Forget the bloody camera! It won't matter when we're dead." But Liam didn't answer. He couldn't. His mind was locked in a loop of Eliza's words. The sea remembers. Do not awaken what sleeps. And yet, it had awakened. By midday, they reached their camp on the southern shore. The tents were still standing, though tossed about by the trembling earth. The ferry's jetty lay just beyond, cracked and tilting into the sea. "Russell," Callum gasped, pointing to the water. "If he comes early, if he sees the signal." He scrambled to the tent, pulling out a flare gun from their emergency kit. His hands shook as he loaded it, then fired into the air. The red streak arced high above the island, leaving a smoky trail before bursting into a desperate star. Both men watched, breathless, praying, but the horizon remained empty. No ferry, no sails, only endless, heaving sea. The silence answered. Callum swore, his voice cracking. "We're trapped. God help us. We're bloody trapped." That night, the drowned dead reached the southern shore. The first one emerged just after sunset, a man in chains, his jaw broken, water gurgling endlessly from his throat. Then came another, and another. Soon dozens trudged from the surf, eyes glowing faintly, steps unhurried but unstoppable. Liam filmed through trembling hands. "It's them, the settlers. They never left." "Mate," Callum hissed, "if you don't run right now." The horde advanced, water streaming behind them, chains dragging like anchors. Their voices rose in a terrible chorus, words broken yet clear. "Join us. The sea remembers. Awaken." Panic exploded through Callum. He grabbed Liam, yanking him into the jungle. The drowned followed, their rattling chains echoing like church bells. Hours passed in a blur of terror. They darted between trees, stumbled over roots, and crawled through thickets, but the whispers followed. Sometimes ahead, sometimes behind, sometimes beside them in the dark. At last, they collapsed in a ruined watchtower, half buried in vines. Callum slumped against the wall, gasping for air. I can't keep running, mate. They're everywhere." Liam knelt beside him, clutching his arm. "We just need to last until Russell returns. 2 more days. We can survive that." Callum laughed, a hollow, broken sound. 2 days. We won't survive 2 bloody hours." He was right. The tremor shook the tower again, dust falling from its stone walls. The creature's presence loomed closer, its shadow stretching across the island, though it remained unseen through the canopy. Liam checked the diary again, desperate for answers. Between the smudged ink and crumbling paper, one final, overlooked entry stood out. "The chains are not to hold us. They are to hold it. We gave ourselves so the world may live, but the sea does not forget." Liam's breath caught. The sacrifices, they weren't victims, they were seals. They chained themselves to the beast to keep it bound. Callum's eyes widened, and now we've broken it free. Before Liam could respond, a cold wind rushed through the tower. Eliza appeared again, shimmering in the moonlight, water dripping endlessly from her form. She stared at Liam, sorrow in her hollow gaze. "End it," she whispered. Liam's throat tightened. "How? Tell me how?" But Eliza only repeated, "End it," before vanishing into mist. Callum gripped Liam's shoulders, shaking him. "What did she say?" "She wants us to end it, but I don't know how." The night stretched endlessly. Every sound, every shadow pressed closer. The drowned dead circled the jungle, their whispers threading through the trees. The earth convulsed more violently with each tremor, as though the island itself would sink back into the sea. Near dawn, they heard something new, a distant horn, faint, low, carried by the wind. Callum shot up, eyes wide. "The ferry! Russell's coming early!" Hope surged through them. They scrambled out of the tower, racing toward the southern shore. Through the gaps in the trees, they saw it. Russell's ferry, a tiny speck battling the waves as it drew closer to the jetty. Callum laughed, tears streaming down his face. We're saved. Bloody hell, we're saved. But Liam's stomach dropped. The sea around the ferry churned unnaturally, black tendrils curling beneath the surface. Wait, he began, but it was too late. From below, a massive tentacle erupted, striking the boat with bone-shattering force. The ferry splintered instantly, breaking apart like kindling. Screams carried briefly across the water, then vanished beneath the roar of waves. Russell and his crew were gone. The sea swallowed the wreckage whole. Callum fell to his knees, screaming, his voice ragged. No, 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 no! That was our chance! Our bloody chance! Liam pulled him back, dragging him away as the drowned dead appeared once more, shambling toward the shore. We can't escape, Liam whispered, horror dawning fully. It won't let us. That night, as they hid in the ruins of a collapsed hut, Callum stared blankly into the dark. His face was pale, drained of hope. It's a trap, the whole island. No one ever leaves. That's why no one talks about it. The sea doesn't let them. Liam, trembling, clutched the camera to his chest. Then maybe the only way out is to do what they did. Bind it again. Chain it. Callum snapped his head toward him, eyes blazing. Are you hearing yourself? You want us to sacrifice ourselves? Liam didn't answer, because deep down, he knew Eliza's warning hadn't been for them. It had been for the world. And if they didn't stop the awakening, Worinora Island wouldn't be the only place consumed. The final choice. The island groaned like a living thing, its heartbeat thundering through the ground. Liam and Callum stumbled through the ruins, every step heavier than the last. The drowned dead pressed closer, their chains clattering like an approaching tide. And above it all, the sea monster writhed just beyond the shore, its massive tentacles reaching skyward, blotting out the stars. It wasn't fully awake yet, but it was close. Liam gripped the diary in one hand and the camera in the other. The words of the final entry replayed in his mind. We gave ourselves so the world may live. Eliza was right, he muttered. They didn't die as victims. They bound it. They became the chains. Callum stopped dead, his face pale in the moonlight. Don't you bloody say it. Don't you dare. Liam met his eyes. We can't outrun this. We can't fight it. But maybe we can finish what they started. You mean sacrifice, Callum spat. Us. You want us to drown ourselves, chain ourselves to that thing? Liam's voice broke. It's the only way. The drowned dead appeared between the trees, eyes glowing faintly. They moved in unison, their hollow voices rising. Join us. The sea remembers. The sea binds. Callum raised his fists uselessly. I didn't sign up to die for some cursed island, mate. We came for a bloody documentary, not to save the world. And if we don't, Liam shouted back. That thing doesn't stop at Worinora. It'll spread. Sydney, Melbourne, the whole coast. Callum froze. His jaw trembled. He wanted to argue, but he couldn't. Because deep down he knew Liam was right. The two men stood in silence, the drowned dead circling, the earth trembling beneath their boots. Finally, Callum whispered, If we do this, there's no going back. There was never going back, Liam replied. At dawn, they dragged heavy rusted chains from the ruins of the old watchtower, relics left behind by the settlers centuries ago. Barnacles encrusted the iron and seaweed clung to its links. They were cold, wet, and unnaturally heavy, as if resisting the touch of the living. Callum stared at them, his throat tight. Feels like they've been waiting for us. They have, Liam said softly. The shore boiled as the creature stirred, its colossal form rising higher. Its body was indescribable, neither squid nor leviathan, but something older, something the sea itself had birthed in anger. Its many eyes burned with deep-sea light, focusing on them like 1,000 suns. The drowned dead lined the sand, silent now, watching. Liam turned to Callum. If one of us stays, maybe it'll be enough. You should go. Callum barked a laugh, bitter and broken. Go where, mate? There's no bloody leaving this place. Not for me. Not for you. He picked up a chain and wrapped it around his chest, his hands trembling but resolute. We do this together. That way we've still got a chance, even if it's not the kind we wanted. Liam's throat tightened, tears burning his eyes. Without a word, he followed suit, winding the chains around his torso and arms until they cut into his skin. The drowned dead stepped forward, chanting now in unison, Bind, bind, bind. They waded into the surf. The water was icy, pulling at them like greedy hands. With every step, the creature loomed larger, its tentacles curling in anticipation. Liam clutched the camera one last time, lifting it toward the horizon. If anyone ever finds this, let them know. We tried. Then he let it fall into the waves. The sea roared. A tentacle crashed down before them, shaking the earth, spraying salt and foam into their faces. Another wrapped around their bodies, dragging them toward the abyss. Callum screamed but didn't resist. Instead, he shouted into the wind, "Do it, you bastard! Take us if it means stopping you!" The chains tightened, glowing faintly with a ghostly blue light. The drowned dead raised their arms, their chants rising to a deafening crescendo. "Bind? Bind? Bind!" Liam gasped as the cold tore through him, deeper than flesh, deeper than bone. It was as if the ocean itself was claiming his soul. He caught Callum's eyes, terrified, furious, but unyielding, and then they were gone, dragged beneath the waves. The sea fell silent. For a long moment, nothing moved. No wind, no waves, no tremors. The drowned dead stood perfectly still, their hollow gazes fixed on the horizon. Then slowly, one by one, they collapsed into the surf. Their chains dissolved, their forms vanishing into foam. The tentacles of the beast thrashed once more, violently, then sank into the abyss. A final roar shook the island, not of anger, but of surrender. And then it was over. The waters stilled. The island exhaled. Worinora slept again. Days later, a small rescue craft approached the island, responding to Russell's missed return. The crew found the jetty shattered, the camp deserted, and no sign of Liam or Callum. Only a single camera washed up on the beach, tangled in seaweed. Its battery was nearly dead, but when they played the footage, they saw glimpses: the ruins, the drowned settlers, the impossible tentacles rising from the ocean. The final clip showed Liam's face, pale and determined, whispering into the lens. "The sea remembers. Don't let it wake again." The tape ended in static. The rescue crew never spoke of what they saw. The footage was sealed away, classified, hidden from public view. On official record, Liam and Callum were listed as lost at sea. But among the locals, whispers returned. Some said the island was cursed. Some said the waves around it carried voices on stormy nights. Some swore they saw two chained figures standing on the reef, watching, holding the sea at bay. And the sea, for now, remained quiet. But as the diary had warned, and as Liam had repeated with his final breath, the sea remembers.